Hey guys, Operator Drewski here, and today we're going to be talking about Milsim games on console and the possibility of that actually really happening. Can it happen? Could we have Milsim games on console at some point again, because we used to back in the day? And really, would they actually have an audience on console? Well, let me just talk about this first. I know most of my fans and audience are going to be PC gamers because a lot of you are watching me play PC games. So probably you guys are PC gamers as well, but there's a good bit of you, a really actually large portion of you that don't have a PC and watch my videos because you don't have a PC. And I used to be in your shoes a long time ago. Back when I was a young wee little lad, I used to have a console, an Xbox One, and not PS4, Xbox 360. And I couldn't afford a PC just because I had already gotten the Xbox One and I couldn't get a job because I was so busy in school, and my parents just wouldn't really understand why I would want a gaming PC when I already had an Xbox One. They didn't really want to give me something else to be distracted with because my grades weren't great already. And there's some people just like that today that are in certain cases where they just cannot grab a PC. A lot of people will instantly just kind of rudely say, well, just get a PC, it's easy, you can do it by yourself, go look up some YouTube videos. But some people just absolutely are uneducated and, as objectively as possible, ignorant on how to really get into PC gaming, or they just can't. They just are limited to, in some way or form, that they just cannot get a PC. And this is what that video is for, those people that cannot get a PC. I'm trying to make them understand what would have to be different about our Milsim games to really put them onto a console. Now, I'm going to be talking as generally, as objectively as possible about these certain subjects because I don't really want to put my opinion into it too much. I'm a PC gamer, but I also highly respect console gamers because I like consoles as well. I think they're fun, simple ways to play games, and some people just like them better. So first off, what games Milsim-like have actually been on consoles? There has been the original Ghost Recon, which was like a linear campaign, but it was still open world. It was made in like 2001 or 2002 or something. Really, really old game for the original Xbox. This game was very, very open, diverse terrains in it. It had a lot of cool features about it. You could customize what type of characters were in your squad, what type of loadouts they had, and it was a really interesting game. I actually played a lot of that game back in the day when I was like, I would say like 6 or 7 even, just because I enjoyed the realistic aspect of it, how you could have long distance engagements with different insurgents and rush skis up in the mountains and stuff. It was a really interesting game to me, and I really, really enjoyed it. I think that's one of the games that really pioneered my my love for Milsim games. Now, there also is Operation Flashpoint and that little series that happened, I think, of 2 or maybe 3 games on Xbox 360, and that was an interesting series as well that was very, very similar to Arma. You could create little missions and stuff, you could go and play them, and it was a large open world, but it was still mapped on a controller. It was kind of cool. Now, since then, since 2008, we have not had, I think, a single military sim, or really not really even military sim, but a realistic military shooter on consoles. It's kind of sad for the people who like military shooters but just can't get a PC for some reason, that they haven't had a military shooter in a long, long time. I'll call them military shooters. What I mean by military shooter is this more realistic than Call of Duty or Battlefield. Battlefield's a little bit too arcadey to call it really a realistic military shooter anymore. After Battlefield 2, maybe. But we haven't had any realistic military shooters for a long, long time on console. So let's just discuss what games are out that could be on console. Now, I made a video about 8 months ago talking about how Arma 3 and its possibilities of coming to console. Arma 3 is a hard game to put on console. You would have to really simplify a lot of the controls, which I don't really know if people would be actually really upset about as long as Arma 3 was on Xbox. But you would have to simplify a lot of the commanding controls. You would have to simplify a lot of the controls in terms of like all of the different inventory items that have different buttons each and stuff. You would have to make some custom keybinds where you'd have to maybe hold down 2 controls at the same time to select a certain item or something like that. But overall, the game in terms of performance could move to console, maybe with some drawbacks. You might have to lower the resolution a little bit, you might have to lower the frame rate to a certain frame rate cap or something, and you also might have to run, let's say, some smaller, simpler maps. But I still think that people on PC might go, wow, you would have to ruin the game to put it on console. Not really. You can do a lot of things to a game to optimize it without really losing the experience. The entire command table for Arma 3, lose it. The entire action menu, lose it. Nobody cares about that. Everybody thinks it's bad. Everybody that's experienced in Arma thinks that Arma's control system is bad. like very veterans of Arma 3 think that it's bad. You could take away and simplify a lot of control things about Arma 3 and still map it to a controller easily and still have the core experience of Arma 3 still be there. You can still have the firefights 95% as similar as they would be on PC, with removing a lot of the crazy complex features of Arma 3. Now the thing is with Arma 3 is that it has that very complex and very awesome editing system where you can edit any missions. You can have a server that's right above another server in the server list that's absolutely different. You can have a Wasteland DayZ Zombies server, then the next one is a realistic military simulation type server with realistic comms and lots of really high experienced members and such. But then you have another server that's just, hey, let's play around and race cars or something. You know, that's basically what Arma 3 is about, and I think that'd be difficult for a console player to really get into. You would have to have a game with preset game modes, very simple type of easy to learn basic gameplay, because Arma 3's learning curve is gigantic enormous. You would have to have a very simple learning curve and basic game modes that some person would easily understand when they ever started a Milsim type game to really attract them to a Milsim shooter, to a realistic military shooter. Now, as a game that I've been playing recently has come up and just kind of sparked my interest more and more as I play it, Squad, which you guys have seen me playing in the past few weeks, a lot actually, has really sparked your guys' interest. I think that Squad is a really good game. I've enjoyed it honestly more than Arma recently, and I still like Arma, but it does have its faults, and I think that its complexity sometimes gets in the way of fun in that game. But a game like Squad is very simple. The key bindings, the mappings of the game is very simple, and you can honestly learn just the basic movement, the basic understandings of the game within just 5 minutes of playing. Now this is something that's good for, let's say, moving to a console, because that easy intuitive control system, as well as lesser controls overall, means that you could bind this to something like a controller. And I actually was interested yesterday to see if I could play Squad on a controller. I plugged in my Xbox One controller to my PC and was actually able to play for a good 15 minutes, and I was actually able to kill a guy. My goal was to kill a guy. That was my single goal with playing with the controllers. If I can kill a guy with a controller, then this could happen. This could be a thing. And guess what? After 15 minutes of walking around, I was actually able to kill a guy. And that's not that rare also in Squad, by the way. The Squad is a very open map. You might not find somebody for 15 minutes. But we finally got into a big ambush, and I was actually able to turn a corner, find a guy right in front of me, and go pew! And take him down in a few shots of an AK-74. Really interesting to me that I was actually able to play Squad easily without even mapping a single key on my controller. And I was actually able to kill a guy. That says to me that with a few more key bindings, with maybe some menu and UI changes to the game, you could fully reformat the game onto an Xbox One controller. I mean, seriously, the Squad control system, the Squad leader system of being able to like select with kind of like a wheel system as well, is literally so close to being able to be perfectly played by a controller, and it's almost like it was kind of built for it. It's almost as if this game was built for being simple, and therefore you could put it onto something like a controller. Now, let's just confirm right now, the game could be played on a controller with some slight changes, especially to like menus and UI and stuff. As long as the entire game works with a controller, it's good for console, but not yet, not fully yet. Let's talk about performance of this game. Squad is a rather, I don't really know whether to say hefty or not hefty game to run, because I definitely get higher frames in Squad than I do in a standard Arma match. Even if there's more people in the Squad game than a standard Arma match, I will get usually more frames on Squad, and that's because it's in Unreal Engine, which is really optimized. And also, Squad is a game that isn't usually as complicated in terms of all the background processes that are running in a game like Arma. It's 40 players versus 40 players, so the server doesn't have to run AI, the AI doesn't have to detect you, and your computer doesn't have to do some processing to really tell the AI where you are and that type of stuff. You're just basically sending your data, your location to the server, what you're doing to the server, back and forth, and then the server spreads that information through all the other clients in the server, and you're good to go. It's not too much processing that really needs to be done. Therefore, in my computer, which is a rather beefy computer, so it's not really a good comparison, but in my computer, which is an i7-6800K and a GTX 1080, my CPU usage when playing Squad of the actual process Squad is around 20%. This means that my computer is only using around 1/5 of its total processing power to just run this huge game, where there's 40 people versus another 40 people battling it out in this gigantic terrain, oh, let's only use 1/5 of our processor to process all that. That gives me hope. I thought this game would run 50%, 70% of my CPU power. Games like Rainbow Six Siege run like, I'm not joking, Rainbow Six Siege runs more CPU usage than Squad. And Rainbow Six Siege is on console. That gives me hope, and it might not be very optimized for console. That might be one reason that it's on consoles, that it's very optimized, because it's honestly very, very easy and simple for a developer to optimize the game for a console because it's one single unit. It's not like you're optimizing your game for, let's say, 10,000 different types of PCs and different kind of different mixtures and compounds of different processors and different graphics cards all together and different hard drives and solid state drives and different RAM amounts. You don't have to optimize for that with a console. You optimize for a single unit. For an Xbox One, you're optimizing for an 8-core CPU, and it's also an APU, so it's also a graphics card in the same integrated chip, and like 8 gigs of RAM and a standard hard drive. That's all you have to optimize for, because the system will never change unless they make a new one. You know, it's very, very simple to optimize for a console. So let's say a console of actually the same pieces and performance as a PC, which is the same, let's say, hardware. So let's say you have a i5 7500 in a console, you also have an i5 7500 in a PC. Usually, and this is weird to some people, but usually the console will actually run better, and it'll run the game better because that developer will look at that console and say, that is the exact processor we need to optimize for. Let's optimize that game, that only version of the game that's going to slide into that console CD tray. Let's optimize that game to play on that processor. Rather, on a PC, they're saying, let's optimize for 1,000 processors. So your processor is overlooked as much as another processor in the line. So it will run better on a console even if it is the same hardware because it's easier to optimize for. And optimization does a lot in terms of performance. Now, Squad is on Unreal Engine, and when you have it on its higher settings, it definitely is very GPU heavy, meaning that it uses a lot of your graphics card performance. Now, an Xbox One is very similar to, let's say, a GTX 660 in terms of performance. A GTX 660 runs Battlefield 4 at 720p at 60 FPS and a little bit higher than that, actually like 60 to 80 FPS. On Xbox One, it runs at 720p and it runs around 60 FPS on, like, I think high settings on Battlefield. It looks honestly pretty good for 720p on the Xbox One, so I think it runs around high preset on Xbox One. But that's just a good comparison for the graphics card or the APU on the Xbox One. We can't really compare the actual processor because there's not really a lot of games like, let's say, Arma on the console that really take a lot of processing power. The best CPU I could guess would be very, very similar to the Xbox One's performance is an FX 6300. Although this isn't an 8-core processor, it's a 6-core processor that's rather low performance per core, and therefore this processor, in my opinion, is very, very close to the actual performance of something like the Xbox One. Now, can a GTX 660 and an FX 6300 run Squad? Yes, it can definitely run Squad. Now, you would probably want your game to be downsized a little bit in resolution down to 960p, but on console, if we're moving the game to console, we could have some drawbacks in the game to optimize it for a console. And there would be some really, really deep background processes that they could probably simplify and cut out to make it optimized for something like a console title, but you can just kind of have some basic concepts that you could also do as well. Let's say if your CPU usage is a little bit too high because there's too many players in a game, you could make it, instead of 40 versus 40 or 50 versus 50, you could make it 30 versus 30, which is still a lot. That's very similar to a standard match of Battlefield 1, which is still a lot of people. If you have a smaller sized map as well, it still is a larger scaled map as well. It's still much larger than any Battlefield map, for example. But if you still have a larger scale map with 30 versus 30, it would still be a rather realistic experience. You could have 3 squads of 10 on each team, and they could work together and talk together to go fight enemy teams. You could also optimize the game by maybe making the maps a little bit simpler, maybe cutting out, let's say, 10% of the trees until you hit that 60 FPS mark at like 1080p and such. You could really do a lot of different things to optimize the game to make the performance a little bit easier for something like an Xbox One to really handle. A PS4, on the other hand, is rather the same in terms of processor performance, but actually a lot higher, like around 20 to 25% higher in performance in terms of its graphics card capabilities compared to the Xbox One. So on the PS4, you wouldn't have to really optimize as much as you would have to on an Xbox One, but are people going to be playing on an Xbox One very soon? Because the Xbox Scorpio is coming out soon, and that thing has something like 6 teraflops of graphics card power. I believe that the actual GPU chip is actually separated from the CPU chip, which is a really good sign for consoles, by the way, because they've never been like that before. It has 12 gigabytes of RAM, and probably will have something like a really high speed hard drive, 1 terabyte hard drive or something. That, in my opinion, could most definitely run Squad the same. I mean, the exact same version of Squad as on PC. As long as the key bindings are mapped well for a controller, it could run the same exact version of Squad on console as it would on PC. So overall, in my opinion, with some optimizations, you could easily run Squad on something like an Xbox One or a PS4. Now, another thing we want to talk about is servers. Servers are kind of interesting because some game companies shut off their servers after a while just because they're not hosted, they're not purchased by the players, and therefore it takes money for those servers to have to keep being online for those very, very few players actually playing the game over, like, let's say 6 years after the game's release. Halo 2, for example, I think just lost its server support on the original Xbox just about a year ago, but still that Halo Master Chief Collection for the Xbox One, which still has Halo 2 playing on it, has servers running for it, especially just because it's a newer version of Halo 2. And they also want you to buy the Master Chief Collection so you can go back and play Halo 2. It's really stupid, but yeah, they did that. But again, Battlefield is a really, really good comparison for this because Battlefield allows players to purchase servers. So, if you had a game like Squad on Xbox, you could most definitely have the ability to let players purchase servers and customize those servers at their will, the same way that they do on PC. A player, if they wanted to create a clan, if they wanted to create a group on Squad, they could have a server by themselves where they could admin the server, they could customize the game modes, the game types, what maps you wanted to play on, and therefore the devs wouldn't have to pay for servers over a long period of time. Now, this does lead to kind of player reliability where you have to rely on the actual player base to keep the game alive, but I still think that a realistic military game on console would definitely get some people at least on board. I feel like this video is going to be downvoted because people are just going to like hate consoles, or they're going to hate PCs, and they don't like each other, and they're very subjective, and lots of younger people watch the channel and will instantly be opinionated on this. But I tweeted out on my Twitter a poll that asked, would you like Milsim games to come to console? 46% voted yes, 54% voted no. And I kind of expected this because I knew that people that follow me are usually PC gamers, and the people who follow me on Twitter especially, and they'll hear the game, they'll just hear the word console and they'll go, no, I don't want that to happen. I don't want that they're going to water down the game on PC so that it's the same on console. No, this doesn't need to happen. I think that's the main argument of people that don't want a Milsim game to come to console, is that the game would be watered down on the PC so that it could be played on console the same way. I don't think it would work anything like that. Battlefield 3 on the PC, 64 players. You could have the graphics turned up to what still stresses graphics cards today. You could have that game play at amazing settings and look absolutely beautiful, and it still runs and it still scales actually really well even at 4K. This game is meant and built for a PC. 64 player games. It's awesome. Xbox 360, Battlefield 3. 24 player cap. 24 players. Imagine playing Battlefield 3 with 24 players. It was still very, very enjoyable, by the way. I don't know how this game was played, and I don't know how it just wasn't empty maps like crazy. But this game was actually playable with 24 players very, very easily. Did you see Battlefield 3 on PC take any hits by moving part of its game to Xbox 360? No, not at all. You saw no hits at all to the actual game performance or the game's features on PC. They actually clearly noted, like, this game is not the same as it is on PC. And I think Battlefield took a really, really good step. They said, hey, we can't have the same game on Xbox 360. It just can't run the 64 player limit. They said, well, we still want the game to be there. I think that's the best way to make a game, is that you say, well, we still want the game to be there. People might just have to accept the fact that it's not the same game as it is on a PC, on a more higher end platform. But I think that people like me, who are people who had Xbox 360s, extremely appreciated the fact that Battlefield 3 came to the console. Now, this poll that I asked, would you like Milsim games to come to console, got 46% yes and 54% no, as I said earlier. So most of the people, are a little bit more than half the people, said no. But what if we were in the console person's shoes? So I asked another question that was a little bit more sided towards the yes. If you couldn't grab a PC, would you like having the ability to play lighter weight games, Milsim games, on your console? This time, 63% voted yes, and 37% voted nah. I put nah this time. That shows to me that if you kind of put yourself in that person's shoes, if you couldn't get a PC, what you would want to have. And I think that people really need to think this way, because they get a clearer vote. They get a clearer and more positive and more objective vote once they really put themselves in other people's shoes. And I think that for the people who are going to say, no, this never needs to go to console, consoles just won't work. Well, there's definitely an audience on consoles that would play this game. I swear by it. There would be a very healthy population of people playing a military sim game if it was on a console, just the same as it would on PC. Would it actually get more players on console? Because there's a lot of games like Battlefield that are the closest thing you can get to a realistic military shooter at the moment that actually have a larger population on console than they do on PC, which is interesting to me. And a game like Squad is a very similar game structurally to a game of Battlefield, where you can join any server, the experience is the same, you talk with your squad mates, you work together as a team to complete objectives, and it's a game that would very, very easily transfer to a console type of environment. Yes, it might take a little bit more learning than your standard Battlefield match, but I think a lot of people would really appreciate it. So that's going to be the end of my video for today, guys. If you guys would be interested in Operator Drewski t-shirts, by the way, they are on teespring.com/OperatorDrewski. Link is in the top of the description down below, as well as if you would like to watch my live streams, I'm on twitch.tv/OperatorDrewski as well, streaming some Squad, streaming some Arma as well, as long as Arma doesn't kill me with walls. Yeah. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoy that type of stuff if you would like to check that out. But also, what do you guys think? If you would have an opinion, check out that little eye at the top right of the corner of the screen and click your vote in. Would you like Milsim games to come to console, or would you not? I'll see you in the next one.